Human beings have been fighting over the Holy Land for thousands of years, leaving it covered in blood. Today, conflict's been raging for over a century. Everyone says they want peace, so why has no one delivered? After more than a century of violence, it's time to separate myth from fact and to find out how this history still impacts the lives of people living here today.
Israel is the Israeli state since ever, since 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago.
One of the things that we know about our families that it has been mentioned in different places from the 1400s and 1300s.
It is the will of God for Jews to live in the land of Israel.
My family came from Hebron. We've been here 20 plus generations.
How did two groups of people become equally convinced that this land is theirs? The current conflict started with the British. As World War I raged, German allies opened up a sprawling new war front in the east. The British needed help. So T.E. Lawrence, or Lawrence of Arabia, and Sir Henry McMahon, British High Commissioner in Egypt, brokered a deal. In exchange for troops, Britain offered support for pan-Arab independence.
Great Britain is prepared to recognize and support the independence of the Arabs in all regions within the limits demanded by the Sheriff of Mecca.
Then, with the Arabs on side, Britain pursued further allies. Many politicians believed in the global power of Jews, but so did the Germans, who were rivals for Jewish support. A bidding war was encouraged by a prominent Jew, who successfully lobbied top British politicians to offer and then deliver bait. Return the Jews to their biblical homeland. But this biblical homeland was part of the same territory earmarked for Arab independence. The catalyst for our present-day conflict had emerged. This motion was supported by Winston Churchill, as well as Prime Minister Lloyd George and Arthur J. Balfour, who were both fervent Christians, keen to turn biblical prophecy into reality. But some were wary of Britain's arrogant king-making, like former Viceroy of India, Lord Curzon.
I do not recognize that the connection of the Jews with Palestine, which terminated 1,200 years ago, gives them any claim whatsoever. On this principle, we have a stronger claim to parts of France.
Britain was prepared to promise anything to recruit allies for the war, and to score Palestine as a staging post to Egypt and India. Britain's colonial policies have led to decades of unintended consequences that still impact the lives of people living here today. Nowhere can the consequences of this be seen more clearly than in Hebron, about an hour from Jerusalem. Issa Amro is a Palestinian activist here.
I am a human rights defender in the city of Hebron. I try to make my people believe in nonviolence resistance and civil disobedience. I was afraid of soldiers, you know. I had to fight my fear to be able to just pass a checkpoint. I just felt them expanding the settlement. This is an infamous settler woman, she's expanding her house to the street and building a new outside room. So I called the lawyers who will call the Israeli civil administration and call the Hebron municipality and will call the Israeli police to try to stop that. Usually it's not easy because they are under the civil law and they give them free hands to do whatever they want. But what she's doing and what they are doing there, it's 100% illegal.
Why is it illegal?
First, it's in the street. Second, the house is owned by a Palestinian family. It's not owned by the Israeli settlers. Third, they don't have any permission from Hebron Palestinian municipality, which is responsible about what is happening. And look, they are running. They are trying to make it fast. And the Israeli army sees that, but they don't stop them. There is no political will to stop them.
Here in Hebron, fewer than 1,000 Jewish settlers live under armed guard in the heart of a city of 200,000 Palestinians. The UN has declared such settlements illegal. About 2 hours' drive from Hebron, Israel Madad lives in Shiloh, another Jewish settlement in the West Bank.
Shiloh was where Hannah prayed for a son, where the tabernacle was erected, where Joshua divided up the land of Israel according to the tribal portions. So are we doing anything wrong by returning to the land of Israel? It's the most Jewish place I could be. That other people came here later is a historical fact. Are we able to share the land? I think Zionism, even its more extreme wing, was always willing to say this is a land for all who live here. There's no problem about Arab, Jew, Christian, Muslim living here in the country as a citizen with full rights. It just has to be understood that in the Middle East, where there are now 24, 25 Arab states, there's going to be one Jewish one.
Germany's Ottoman allies controlled much of the Mediterranean and Middle East. But before they were defeated, a secret agreement was made to divide Ottoman land between Russia, France, Italy, and Britain. This is when the idea that Britain should govern Palestine and Transjordan first took hold. Although Jerusalem was to remain under international mandate. Munna lives 40 minutes from Shiloh in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Christians have been in the Holy Land for over 2,000 years, an important part of the Palestinian population, now decreased to around 2%. They often get forgotten in this conflict.
I used to hear my grandmother say, "I just hope that your days are better than mine." But I cannot see that it's going to be better with all that's going on in the world.
Grace you and peace from God the Father and Mother, and our Lord Jesus Christ. The preaching to be for today is taken from Revelation chapter 1.
People are being targeted. Nothing has stopped. The settlements are still being built. What's the point of negotiating peace when it's not peace what they want? It's a piece of land that they're after, not peace. I just feel that this is the safest haven that I can be at. I just want to live. I reached that point. I honestly reached that point.
More than 80 years before World War I, around 1830, a Christian evangelist called for Jews to return to Zion, now Israel, to resettle their Bible-mandated homeland. At stake, a homeland for Jews. And by the late 1800s, after centuries of persecution by the Christian world, this call had unified politically under Austro-Hungarian journalist Theodor Herzl, who wrote that only through gaining a Jewish state in their ancient homeland could Jews escape rife anti-Semitism. Jews could go to this land, but there was trouble in paradise. In 1891, Ukrainian Jewish Zionist pioneer Ahad Ha'am went to Palestine.
The Jewish settlers treat the Arabs with hostility and cruelty, trespass unjustly, beat them shamelessly for no sufficient reason. The Jews were slaves in the land of their exile and suddenly found themselves with unlimited freedom. This sudden change has produced in their hearts an inclination toward repressive tyranny.
At the end of the 19th century, both Ahad Ha'am and a fellow by the name of Epstein were very much concerned when visiting that the land was not empty. There was a population here. For them, it was like the bride is beautiful. In other words, the land is good, but she's already caught up with someone. Maybe we're not the proper groom.
Ahad Ha'am's warning to respect Palestinians already living in the Holy Land went unheeded. The lead singer of Israeli metal band Orphaned Land lives in the once Arab city of Jaffa. Kobi Farhi uses their music to advocate coexistence.
Everything with the band started to give me a lot of meaning to my life. Orphaned Land. Seeing that place, which is described as a holy place or a promised land to the Jews. What's so holy if blood is spilled all over this place? That's why we've decided that this place is more some kind of an orphaned land. As an artist, you start to question yourself if you are true and authentic. And you start to get your opinion yourself, not only based on the media. We've started to write these songs from a place where we stand in the middle and we don't take sides, using elements from all this Middle East. And the result was amazing because we have fans who are Israelis, who are even settlers or religious Orthodox Jews. And then on the other hand, we have fans who are Arab, Muslims, who lives in Gaza. I think that I was attacking politicians or religious priests many times in our albums, but this time we attack the people themselves. Because Albert Einstein once said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who do nothing about it. Most of the people, they're not terrorists, they're not bad, but they just don't care. They just go home to watch Big Brother, to watch TV, to read about Kim Kardashian's ass.
The Holy Land is the birthplace of Judaism, but most Jews were forced to leave during the Babylonian and Roman conquests. And by 1917, while small numbers of Jews had returned over centuries, most were content to remain in the diaspora, with Jews in places like Britain worried that supporting Zionism would jeopardize their positions in their adopted homes. But at the same time, in Russia and Eastern Europe, where persecution raged, and amongst the working classes, Jewish Zionism flourished. The word Zionism now means support of modern Israel, but was defined as an international movement for the establishment of a Jewish national or religious community in Palestine. Alongside, anti-Semites from Russia to America and Britain saw Zionism as an opportunity to get rid of their Jews, which meant there was considerable support in 1917 for British Minister Arthur Balfour, who was about to make a declaration that would change history.
When I was 12 years old, there was the first time I was confronted with a demonstration. As a child, I was really confused. That was the first time that I realized that something was going on that is way more than my understanding. It kept coming back into my mind until I realized what it meant. It was demonstration against Balfour Declaration, but I never knew who Balfour was.
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine.
For Zionists, support by a world power was a game changer, one they'd lobbied hard for. In his letter to Lord Rothschild, sent just 2 years after Britain pledged Arab independence, Balfour promised a Jewish home in a country that was 90% Muslim or Christian. And this commitment was tabled just as Britain's previous agreement with the Arabs was about to pay off.
Allenby's army followed the route of the ancient Egyptians up the plains from Gaza. And on the other side of the Jordan, the Arabs under Lawrence and Faisal moved up in support. And in 1917, Jerusalem itself was captured.
Following General Allenby's historic victory over the Ottomans, Colonel Sir Ronald Storrs served as military governor of Jerusalem. But he was deeply concerned by the Balfour Declaration.
The declaration took no account whatever of the actual inhabitants of Palestine.
This was not the first time the country had been colonized. Yet again, the peoples of Palestine had been denied the chance to rule themselves independently.
We are so tired and so abused, not only by the British, but by the Ottoman and then the Israelis. Yes, I'm angry because they cannot give what's not theirs to others. You cannot promise what's not yours.
But promising land that wasn't British was exactly what Britain did. First referenced by Herodotus in the 5th century BC, Palestine came to include what's now Israel. In 1917, the Palestinians did not have their own access to Britain's corridors of power. But worse than this, they were unable to unify, with different families controlling religious and civil administrations. While Christian Palestinian progressive education pioneer Khalil al-Sakakini could only comment from the sidelines.
Yesterday, they fawned over the Ottoman government, and today they fawn over the English government. We have a place, we have a language, we have a culture. Independence, independence!
In 1919, a commission was convened to ask what Arabs wanted. Most preferred American rule under President Wilson, but he died, giving Britain the mandate of Palestine. From the start of the mandate, British officers complained that Zionists had their own agenda. Diaries show that the mandate was severely underfunded and understaffed. With the Great War just over, turning Palestine into a Jewish home was likely not a British priority. So Zionists took free rein. The global Jewish community was sending charitable monies, Halakha, to support immigrants. Support that continues to this day. And W.F. Sterling, governor of Jaffa, witnessed Zionists pushing change on all fronts.
Palestine was officially a trilingual country, and every public notice had to be issued in 3 languages. But since the bulk of the Jewish colonists did not understand Hebrew, they had to sit down and learn their supposedly native tongue.
Language and religion were not the only dividers. Sterling also witnessed potentially explosive culture clashes.
The Jews, who had little or no inhibitions, thought nothing of the practice of mixed bathing in the nude. The Arabs, with their strict rules of sexual conduct, regarded behavior such as this as the very negation of elementary decency.
On the one side were the Arabs of Palestine, whose case was strong, and Zionists knew it.
If the arithmetical conception of democracy were to be applied now, the majority that would rule would be the Arab majority, and the task of establishing and developing a great Jewish Palestine would be infinitely more difficult.
Many Palestinians have lived here for generations, but for those who believe the Bible, the Jewish claim is stronger. But is this true? Israelites were first recorded in 1202 BC, and archaeology also shows two periods of ancient rule.
The land could theoretically belong to the Canaanites if there were any today. Yes, invaders, yes, conquerors, but no one stayed and no one gave it a life and identity of its own except for the Jewish people. Tel Shiloh is an amazing place. It just shows you in a very small area what this country is about in terms of its historical continuation. All peoples, all religions, all types of cultures are all to be found here. So for us, it says, yes, we were here. This is our land.
But where's the evidence?
Walls that we know with pottery or arrowheads or jewelry from that period of time. So we can establish a time period. We cannot establish a specific person who lived there or something else like that.
If this history has not yet been established, how is the Bible supporting the Jewish claim to the Holy Land?
I do believe that everything in the Bible, as much as possible, has either been proven or, according to what we've seen develop, will be proven. If you remove this from this area, if you deny us the return to this country, we have no holidays, we have no customs, we have no literature. We are nothing.
Israel's fear that Jews are nothing without the land of Israel is shared by many. Should this existential claim trump the long-standing residential claim of the Palestinians? For some, like Kobe and his Palestinian friend Abed, coexistence is still possible.
When you have a friend, or when you have someone who is like your brother, me and Abed, we always fight each other. Who will pay the bill? I will pay the bill. No, it's my turn. I want to pay the bill. You are my guest. I will pay. So brothers, they don't fight. No, this is mine and not yours. This land is mine and not yours. It's the other way around. Everything that is mine, it's yours. That's the true peace. That's the true brotherhood, the true peace that can be achieved. The only way to make peace is like that.
Touring with Orphan Land was a lot of fun. People always wanted to interview us because, oh, you're an Israeli and he's a Palestinian and you're like brothers and family. But that's how it's been. It's like today going to the US and asking a white guy, oh, do you have any African-American friends? And doing like, you know, an item about, oh, this is this white guy who have an African-American friend. Like, what you're talking about? This is the norm.
But is peace and harmony actually achievable now, when the Balfour Declaration sparked violence so long ago? Following the declaration, Ukrainian revisionist Zionist leader Ze'ev Jabotinsky began importing weapons illegally and training Jews in warfare.
We're going to Palestine, first for our national convenience and second, to sweep out thoroughly all traces of the Oriental soul.
Another young Zionist, David Ben-Gurion, was also rising fast.
There is a national question here. We want the land to be ours, the Arabs want the land to be theirs.
But as David Ben-Gurion articulated the basic problem, the Zionist cause was up against an unshakable fact. When the British arrived in Palestine, Muslims had ruled these lands for over 1,000 years. By 1920, a serious clash was inevitable. Violence at the Muslim Nebi Musa festival was a watershed, with Haaretz newspaper reporting there'd been no clashes like these for hundreds of years. Palestinian nationalist Khalil al-Sakakini took the uprising more personally.
The furor almost turned into madness. I went to the municipal garden, my soul disgusted.
On the 30th of June 1920, the first Jewish High Commissioner, Herbert Samuel, signed a receipt for one Palestine complete. But peace was short-lived. At the May Day parade in 1921, Jaffa's governor, W.F. Sterling, had a front-row seat.
We had serious riots in Jaffa. Jews were shot and stabbed in the narrow lanes of the town, and Arab women joined in the attacks on Jewish colonies. Atrocities were committed by both sides, and some Arab women lying wounded in the fields were seen to have their breasts scythed off by the Jewish colonists. Troops were eventually rushed up.
Called an orgy of pillage, as ringleaders were brought to justice, Zionists were angry with Herbert Samuel for treating Jews and Arabs equally. Samuel faced a horrifying thought.
Nothing would be worse than if it were to appear that the one thing the Jewish people had learned from the centuries of their own oppression was the way to oppress others.
Like Ahad Ha'am, Samuel felt uncomfortable with the idea that Jews had turned from victim to oppressor. In Samuel's Palestine, the Jewish population had increased by more than a third over 5 years. Back in Britain, there were escalating questions in the House of Lords. Had the mandate's policies created a monster?
The Zionist home must and does mean the predominance of political power on the part of the Jewish community in a country where the population is predominantly non-Jewish. The Jews in Palestine have lived in the past in harmony. The whole agitation has come from outside, from Jews in other parts of the world. To sum up, in 1915, we were certainly to have an Arab state. In 1917, we were to have a Jewish national home. In 1918, we were to have a self-governed Arab state under British guidance. But in 1922, we come back to a Jewish state.
Such extensive British parliamentary debates have largely been forgotten, even when concerns proved prophetic.
Zionist colonization must either stop or else proceed regardless of the native population, which means that it can proceed and develop only under the protection of a power that is independent of the native population, behind an iron wall, which the native population cannot breach. That is our Arab policy.
With powerful British ministers favouring Zionists, this policy would come back to haunt Britain, setting the scene for today.
Israel is a state that's basically built on making anyone who is not Israeli, and I want to say in this case also not white, feel very, very, very insignificant.
I'm not a second-class citizen. I'm a human with rights and dignity.
But erosion of Palestinian rights and influence really began as land first started to change hands in the 1920s. Zionists were eagerly buying land, with Arab landowners selling willingly, if often in secret. Muslim Palestinian nationalist Anwar Nusseibeh saw the inevitable pain.
Every acre of Arab land, once it is taken over by the other side, becoming inalienably and forever the property of the other side, that you cannot buy, that you cannot lease, that you cannot work. Well, gradually people felt that they were pushed out, inch by inch, from their heritage, from their soil.
This battle for the land still touches most lives here.
When I was a teenager, even though I grew up in Jaffa and I know the stories of coexistence, I got brainwashed from the media. It's strange to talk about it, but I remember at one point I said I have to do something. If it's not to put my fist on an Arab's face, then I have to do something. And I just did this graffiti and I wrote, "Death to all Arabs."
When I was just 6 months old, the 6 Days War broke, and my mom and dad had to flee us all, and we stayed in the caves. In 1948, rumors were spread. Young women were raped or taken away. Land was confiscated. So people were scared from these things.
The year 1967, I was here during the war. In fact, I spent the week of the war in a foxhole.
During my childhood, the Ibrahimi massacre happened just a few meters from my school. Balfour. He killed 29 Palestinians and hundreds were injured.
The massacre of Palestinians in 1994 by a Jewish settler was a tragic echo of an incident that had happened 65 years earlier. In 1929, a police superintendent witnessed an Arab in the act of cutting off a child's head with a sword.
On seeing me, he tried to aim the sword at me, but missed, and I shot him low in the groin. Behind him was a Jewish woman smothered in blood.
1929, we had a massacre in Hebron against the Jewish community here, and we are not proud of that massacre.
With the Hebron massacre, a violent watershed had been passed for the second time, and the situation was about to explode.
I don't want to be pessimistic, but it seems to me that everything is getting worse. There's more checkpoints on our side. There's more Hamas on their side. The weapons in Gaza and in Israel, it's much, much bigger. I think the hate is even bigger. I think the fact that social media is now a part of our life, everyone has a microphone today. I can see Jews, Israelis that say, should wipe all Gaza, just throw a nuclear bomb on them. You can hear Arabs who say, too bad that Hitler didn't finish his job.
Enforcing separation between Jews and Palestinians has fueled mistrust.
It's complicated because they do have a very complex style of living that is very different and very not Western, I would call it, and not democratic.
Israeli soldiers were conducting a training how to arrest violently a Palestinian. It's a kind of harassment. It's not kind of security because people will not reach here without passing a metal detector and another checkpoint. And the kids were afraid. They thought that something wrong happening. So I told them it's only a training, but Palestinian children in these neighborhoods, they don't know what is a training and what is real. So they are always terrified, intimidated to walk around or to go to their school.
I didn't know how bad the situation was in Palestine until I lived in the US during my years in college, because we are normalized to think and believe that this is okay and that we are second-class citizens.
Many times I find myself thinking about how it is that I live in such a privileged, safe, liberal bubble. And around me there is occupation, and there is people suffering, and there is poverty and lack of human rights.
From the 1930s, human rights were on a collision course with the authorities as the British cracked down to suppress increasing Jewish and Arab gang violence. Within 14 years, and with US and UK immigration now capped, the Jewish population more than tripled. And there were more than 10,000 incidents in Palestine over 16 years.
Either people will suppress their anger, which will make them go mad, or they will rebel, and placid, beautiful Palestine will become a land of insurrections.
Violence escalated during the Arab Revolt from 1936 to 1939.
This is the extent to which that people were able to express their resentment at being neglected, their destiny being controlled by forces which are completely outside themselves, in which they had no say at all, and which they felt would ultimately result, as it did in fact, in their complete non-existence as a people on their country, on their soil.
Today, these now entrenched patterns have seen the Palestinians contained in ever smaller pieces of land and has become a full-blown occupation.
I think occupation is a big issue. I don't think there is a way to make occupation moral.
الحوار والجلوس على مائدة واحدة أنا مع هذا الكلام، لكن لست مع إنه الإنسان يكون في عندك اختلاف في توازن القوى. يعني إنسان ضعيف مع إنسان قوي يجلسوا بنفس الطاولة، معروف إنه رح يكون في هناك إملاءات من القوي على الضعيف، فبالتالي يعني لازم يكون في توازن، لازم يكون في حقوق الحقوق اللي أعطتها كل الأعراف والقوانين الدولية للشعوب التي تعيش تحت الاحتلال.
Palestinians in the West Bank are governed with different laws from Israeli Jews. Here, they live under military rule, with strict controls on their movements.
The political situation between Israel and Palestine, and it is a political, it's not a religious situation, is affecting our everyday life. My extended family lives in Beit Jala, and if I want to go and visit there, I have to pass 2-3 checkpoints at least.
My sister, she has a residence of Gaza, and she can't come to Ramallah because Gaza people cannot come unless they have a special permit. So for me to see my sister, we have to meet in Jordan.
The state of Israel grants a higher legal status for somebody who was born for a Jewish family in Palestine, and at the same time grants or maintains an inferior status for a Palestinian living under Israeli control.
I'm one of the very few lucky people who has a job in Palestine at this age. I have to go through Kalandia checkpoint every day to cross through and cross back. I have a permit. I was born in Jerusalem, but I was never able to go to Jerusalem until I got this permit for this job through this international NGO. Not because I was born there, not because I'm Palestinian, nothing to do with me being equal to any other Israeli citizen who has access to that place. The treatment there every morning, the way the checkpoint is designed, is to make you feel like you are worthless.
To some, these restrictions have come about out of necessity.
Somebody is telling you, this is my place, and like, go away from here, I was here. And you tell him, yes, okay, you know what, I will give you this area. Instead of telling him, no, it's not your place, it's my place, and you give him the area, then no wonder he'll fire rockets at you, because you already gave him the justice.
A checkpoint means I want to make sure you carry nothing that would kill someone. It's not there to say, okay, stand in line, get on your knees, or any sort of other discriminatory or inhuman behavior. It's not there simply because we don't like Arabs. It's because we don't like violence done against us.
Almost 90 years ago, resistance was already well underway.
Whereas the Jews are armed, and since they wish ill of the Arabs, and every time an Arab falls into their hands, they attack him, and whereas the government protects them, discriminates in their favor, and instructs them to denigrate the law, for all these reasons, I request to bear arms.
Flames were fanned again as the Jewish Agency suggested an idea. Transfer of at least a fifth of the Arab population to Transjordan. By 1937, Jews formed a third of the population of Palestine, and the idea of population transfer soon took root. Its legacy lingering.
I have a lot of Palestinian friends that live abroad, and they can't come and visit because they don't have the status to come and visit. They don't have the right passport to enter what we call Israel-Palestine. And then you find out that there is a lot of Ethiopians and any other origin country, they can come and visit and live in Israel.
When the Jews came from Ethiopia, the country celebrated. It was like it was a great festival.
The fact that any diaspora Jew or part Jew can move to Israel, where diaspora Palestinians have no such right, is a key stumbling block to peace. The world changed as the Nazis rose. 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
My grandpa, he had an uncle that during World War II, he was a partisan fighting against the Nazis. And the story says that there were gypsies who were telling information of where he is, and then they killed him.
On my mother's side of the family, most of her aunts and uncles did not make it out of the Holocaust.
Many Palestinians expressed sympathy, but asked why Muslims of Palestine should be more humanitarian than the world's Christians.
People who has faced such painful agony through the Holocaust should not be doing the same to other humans. I really feel sorry for the Jews, but does that give them the right to take over my homeland? I don't think so.
In 1944, when it came to the Holy Land, Zionists had lost their British political backing, with Britain now refusing to admit fresh immigrants, just as Jewish interest in immigrating rocketed, thanks to the Holocaust. So groups like Irgun issued a declaration of war against the British, who they wanted out, initiating a long campaign of violence, just as the Allies emerged from World War II victorious. But victory cost Britain dear. And there was a new sense of purpose in their rhetoric on Palestine, as expressed to the Prime Minister.
If we are not prepared to maintain law and order in Palestine, then it would be better to get out.
Thank you. When I came into office, I promised to look at the world's challenges with open eyes and very fresh thinking. I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interests of the United States of America and the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
When Donald Trump announced Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, he was dealing with this as a deal. The life of people and the rights of people and the human rights of people is not a deal that you can negotiate on a table for take it or leave it.
If America's recent approach to peace isn't working, who does need to take the lead negotiation role? Someone has to. Historically, this level of disenfranchisement has always led to revolution. As the race towards statehood accelerated, there was another unforeseen casualty. Jews who'd lived peacefully for centuries across the Arab world would be forced to leave as Palestinian resentment against Zionist actions spread. Then violence reached new heights.
Jerusalem has long been the focal point of the still unsolved problem of Palestine.
In the Holy Land, violence continues. Members of underground organizations blow up the Cairo-Haifa Express, carrying 250 British troops among its passengers. The heavy blast kills 8 and injures 41, smashing the wooden coaches to kindling wood.
5 Britons die and 6 more are injured as a blast wrecks police headquarters at Sarona near Tel Aviv in Palestine.
The gloves were off as Zionist terrorism against Britain accelerated. It's estimated there were almost 50 incidents, many deadly, in the first half of 1946 alone. But the King David Hotel bombing plumbed new depths.
The King David Hotel itself. It was in the wing on the right of the picture that the terrorists placed their explosive. The hotel housed the British Army headquarters and the Palestine government offices, and casualties were very heavy. 65 deaths are reported, and there is little or no hope of survival for any of the 58 missing. Nearly 50 others were injured. The Jewish terrorist organization, Irgun Tzvai Leumi, openly admitted responsibility for the bombing. Many arrests have been made.
Violence had become entrenched, and many British politicians now saw the Balfour Declaration as a colossal blunder. Even Winston Churchill had changed his mind. The cost to Britain was too high, a sentiment echoed by Hugh Dalton.
The present state of affairs is not only costly to us in manpower and money, but is of no real value from the strategic point of view. You cannot, in any case, have a secure base on top of a wasp's nest.
Having created this wasp's nest, the British were now in full retreat. Partition was suggested. Zionists accepted, while Palestinians refused to share what they still saw as their land. On November 29, 1947, the UN's proposal to divide the country passed. Violence restarted immediately, Zionists now in full pursuit.
People left their country dazed and directionless, without homes or money, falling ill or dying while wandering place to place. There are 2 possibilities: a holy war, jihad on a national scale, or the Arabs would fight as isolated terrorist cells, as in Ireland.
Anwar Nusseibeh felt that war had caught Palestine's Arabs disorganized and leaderless, its politicians incompetent, corrupt, and treasonous, while British rule had weakened the Arabs and strengthened the Jews. By May 1948, Zionist paramilitary groups like Haganah and Irgun had conquered Tiberias, Safed, and Haifa. Ben-Gurion called Haifa a frightening and fantastic sight. A dead city, a carrion city, without a living soul. It's estimated that 750,000 Arabs fled or were expelled from Palestine during this period. They call it the Nakba, the catastrophe. And together with post-Holocaust immigration, the Nakba radically changed the country's demographics, with Jews forming almost half of the population. A 10-fold increase in less than 30 years. Can we even imagine what such a seismic population shift would feel like anywhere in the world today? The British left Palestine in 1948, leaving a new state of Israel with shaky foundations, entrenched patterns of violence and divisions which persist to this day.